Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham General Committee, Committee of the Whole to order. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that the agenda for the April 7th, 2015 special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as circulated. Councillor Durley, I think you indicated that you wanted to change the order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seeing as the one of the people involved and his agent are here, I would like to recommend that we move 5.3.1 as well as the item that was referred from council dealing with this matter to a quicker spot on the agenda so these folks won't be detained any longer than they need.
Okay, thank you. We'll move it immediately after disclosure of pecuniary interest. All those in favor of that amendment? Any opposed? So that amendment carries. And now to the agenda as amended. Any other changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts? So noted that no members have any conflicts of interest. Thank you. So now we move to item 531, request for temporary use. Where is that? Sorry. Apologies. It has been moved by Councillor Junkin that committee receives the issue sheet regarding this request for temporary use, possibly historic dwelling, while a replacement dwelling is constructed, this report, and further that committee recommend the council approve the course of action as described in this report and authorize the mayor and town clerk to enter into a development agreement that will ensure either the removal of the existing dwelling at 1732 Cream Street or protection of the existing dwelling under the Heritage Act and change of use provision of the building code once the new home is ready for occupancy. Any discussion regarding this matter? Councillor Junkin.
If I understand this right, we always, as far as having him living in the dwelling as he's building the house, obviously we've done that before. But as far as if he doesn't get it designated as a heritage site, there are ways that I mean, I've seen it done on other farms, that the older house could be disabled, so as in either the plumbing taken out of it or what have you, and then it could be used as an outbuilding, storage facility. I was wondering if that could be an option in this case.
Okay. Mr. CAO, I see our director's not here. I believe he's ill. Can you respond?
Yes, that is correct. It could be considered an accessory building. There would have to be a component removed, like you suggest, to achieve that. I haven't had direct involvement in this file, but I understand that there's a desire from the owner and from the town to look at the historical designation because it has been suggested that it quite possibly could be a historic building. So we wanted to figure that out.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Ribbiak? I'm sorry, Councillor Durley, I thought you signaled. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, just for clarification, and if indeed the historical designation is given, both homes can be used as residences simultaneously?
Mr. CAO?
No, I don't believe so. One would be designated, but that means it would be protected.
But not available as a dwelling?
I don't believe that would be correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supportive of this action. I think it demonstrates creativity on the part of our planning staff in an effort to work with the proponent and try and come up with a creative solution to what might turn out to be an interesting dwelling and attribute to our community, particularly if we're trying to encourage tourism and leverage our heritage assets. In speaking with the proponent, I'm led to believe that many of the elements of the home are still original, fireplace, floor, ceiling, albeit some of the things have been changed. It's vinyl sided at the present time. And hopefully the proponent, if they do get designation, would work over time to restoring it, if it is designated as a heritage structure, to bringing it back to all its glory so that we can then leverage it, in fact, for our community. As far as Councilor Rubiak's question and talking with the Director of Planning, it's absolutely that he cannot use that as a dwelling. In fact, it has to be disabled as a dwelling by removal of, kitchen wiring and plumbing and probably, in fact, bathroom facilities as well. In speaking with the proponent, I found them to be very genuine and very concerned about the heritage value of it, and is willing to work with the community to advance that. And I think that's great. We're embarking on heritage designations, and here we have a resident who is willing to work with the town on a designation. And I fear that as we move forward in the designation process, we may in fact run into the exact opposite at times as well. So good on us for trying to work with him and come up with a creative solution. So I pass that out to our staff, and I will be supporting this action.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Anything further, Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a long time to make sure that all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed with the proponent and his agent dealing with our staff and possible heritage designations and procedures leading up to that during the construction of the new home. So I think if we, certainly I would support this staying for now. I'm sure that there will be some bridges to cross between now and the time that the construction of the new home is done, and I'm sure that everything will be able to be discussed and dealt with accordingly. So I'd be supportive of that as well.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? All right, are we ready for calling the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And we look forward to hearing more about this as it progresses, and this will go to council with a development agreement at our next council meeting. Okay, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your interest in trying to keep historic structures up. Thank you. And now we will move now we'll move back to the regularly scheduled agenda and move to corporate services reports.
Do you want to receive the letter?
Oh, I'm sorry. The clerk is indicating that we should receive the item of correspondence.
I just have a motion to receive.
I believe it was Councillor Junkin that made that initial motion.
he
So, Councillor, would you move that again?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll fill it in there.
It was referred here by council, so we need to receive it. Going to call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks again. Thank you. Now we'll move to this motion moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole recommended council the 2015 first quarter revenue and expenditure report be received for information. Comments, questions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the 2015 first quarter capital project update report be received for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Papp?
Just quickly, I'm just kind of pleased I got a printout of our tenders. I thought, or is that going to be dealt with later?
It will be in the next report, but.
Okay, then I'll leave that. I just was, nice to see.
Okay.
Okay, no problem. Just,
Okay.
just curious.
Anything on the capital report? It seems like some progress is taking shape on that. Pleased to receive that, and you're right, Councillor, there's some reference obviously to tenders
Okay,
in here.
sorry,
but-
I apologize.
No, that's okay. So anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Papp that Committee of the Whole received the March 2015 Corporate Services Report for information. And Councillor, that does include that email that was sent today regarding some of the tenders. The treasurer added that. It was, so do you want to speak to that, Councillor?
Oh, just a question through you to the treasurer. Is a change in procedure, because that's the first time I've seen this before, or have we always thought we were only going to be told about the winning Am I at a loss, or am I missing something?
Yeah, Mr.
Maybe you can help me. I'm
well,
pleased to
this-
see it, I have to tell
This
you.
report has always been provided on the monthly CAL
Didn't
report
see it.
for corporate services. We changed the format a little bit to include all the scoring. It is also posted on the website right after the award of the
So
proposals.
that's
are
what
given.
changed.
Yeah.
Right.
So you showed them in the scoring, so the scoring indicates those with the high scores, even though the dollar amounts could be high.
Yes, the
I'm not trying to
scoring
put you on
is
the
done before the pricing envelope is open.
Right.
So they don't see the pricing before that. It's part of the scoring process after that process has happened. But the evaluation criteria is always layered into the RFP or the tender so that they're aware of what they're being evaluated on.
So this will go on our website, and those that have bid on these projects will have an opportunity to see them.
That's correct.
I have to tell you, congratulations, that's very, very important. I can tell you of another local municipality that doesn't do that, and people start guessing as to why they didn't get something and ask what the scores are, and it seems to be like a CIA secret. I don't know why. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Anything else to that total bid amount sheet that's there? Interesting, lots of scoring around the same amount for that one project, so very interesting. Anything else on the treasurer's report? Counselor Ribbiak and then Counselor Kersey. Counselor Ribbiak.
Thank you. Item 13, Wi-Fi in Peace Park. Indicates the usage for the month of January. I assume that's a typo. We're really talking about March?
Sorry, yes.
And again, my question with regard to comparative data in that report, we see this report every month, but it's hard for me now to judge whether it's bigger, smaller, better, worse. So comparative data would be much appreciated, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Treasurer?
Comparative to last year or comparative just month to month?
My answer to that question is always, Mr. Mayor, if I may, what's important
Right.
to the town? What are we measuring? What are we looking for to see whether, in fact, our objective is being achieved? So really, the question gets tossed back to you, Madam Treasurer, through you, Mr. Mayor. What are you looking for when you look at those numbers? And if you can express those progressions to us, it'll be probably most valuable to us as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the component of what we're looking for is the utilization and how much data they're pulling at, which we get in the total value each month. And then we would adjust accordingly with respect to if we need more data available to them. There is the security measures are in place where they get logged out after 30 minutes and so forth. So those are the types of things that we would look for, not necessarily all the time what sites they're going on, unless we're going to start using it for economic development and those kind of tools going forward into the future, which I think when we discussed at the last committee meeting, that might be something, a resource available to us or a tool available to us to market some of our stuff going forward. So currently at this time, our manager of IT is monitoring it all the time. And this is a report he puts out just to say we're still in line, everything's fine, they're not accessing sites that they shouldn't be because there are security issues around that as well, so.
Can I just build on what you're suggesting, Counselor? And
Please.
because I had the same comment. You know, we've had this report for a year and a half, maybe with the Wi-Fi in Peace Park, and really the issue is what's different, what's new, what's out of line, or are we achieving what we want to achieve with it? So just to have the raw numbers, we've had a lot of raw numbers, but I think the counselor's saying, okay, that's fine, but tell me, what does it mean? So whether it's comparative data from previous months through the year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe if staff could look at that and say, and talk to the IT manager and say, you know, is it out of line? Is it in line? Is it seasonal? Is it whatever? Like looking for trending on that type of thing. Is that what you're suggesting, Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and there's certainly one number in here that would indicate to us whether it's of use or not, and that's the number of clients accessing Wi-Fi. I mean, that number must be easy to compare, have data to compare on, and it would tell us whether, in fact, this utility is gaining greater and greater acceptance or is dropping off or whatever. So certainly that number would be useful. The percentages are interesting, but again, not knowing what we're trying to achieve with that information, it's hard for me to understand with it, other than to note that it's interesting that miscellaneous web gets a lot.
Thank you,
And
Madam
might-
Treasurer.
Might add to that, the clients could be the same client accessing several different times. It also includes town staff that might be accessing as they go out the doors here. So as understanding what the public is something that I can bring back to the manager of IT and see if there's a way to find that out. It has changed since we put a hotspot on the arches. It is picking up more, and that's something that we can bring back to and share with council on how that's increasing the number of uses of the Wi-Fi availability down here. It will increase significantly, as we see. It will increase coming into May and June with the startup of the supper market, and definitely increases threefold at Summer Fest, whatever.
Okay,
Okay, so I will bring back some comparative data in the next report.
okay, thank you. To this one, still, Counselor?
In a very general way, I understand that we're meant to provide a Wi-Fi site in Fenwick as well at some point, so presumably we'll also have a report there, and we'll be able to track its use.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Anything further to this particular item, number 13? Okay, thank you. Anything further, Counselor, on
No.
any of the other items?
Thank you.
So, Counselor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, a question to our treasurer. The municipal grants that we accepted this year, have we received all the data from all the groups, and have those monies now all been released, or the in-kind's been agreed to with all the groups?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have sent the letters to the awards, requests or recommendations from the municipal and approved by council. Some of them required some information to be brought to back to the town treasurer so that it could be shared with council and a decision of release of the grant could be made. We have not yet received that information. Some of the other grants, they are required to produce receipts for some of the stuff that they're buying. They've started that process of bringing those receipts in and having us release some of the grant in increments instead of all out. So they are working, the ones that were total release, like Women's Place, as you've seen on here, that check has been already sent to them. So we are in the process of completing that, and when we don't hear from the proponents that are required to provide us with information, we're certainly communicate with them again to see where that stands. But we have not released some of the funding due to that.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will you be bringing, through you, Mr. Mayor, will you be bringing forward a report to council at some point on where we stand in that and what's outstanding? And
Absolutely.
Okay.
And with respect to that, under the recommendations from the municipal grant committee, some of the expenses were estimated. So there may be an opportunity where there's some funding left that council may decide what to use it for. So just-
Okay, thank you. Maybe our next, next CAL meeting. Okay, can you include that in your next CAL report? Information on the municipal grants? Thank you. Anything further? Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Durley.
This is about another matter. Mr.
Okay, anything further on that matter? Municipal grants, okay. Another matter?
Under other projects, number 18, Niagara Regional Dog Park, I see the Friends are requesting Pelham use a portion of the remaining donations collected by the town to install a wind barrier. My understanding is it is the region's dog park, and they have assumed all responsibility and liability for it. Would we be in trouble if we were to go in there and try to install something, or should we negotiate with them to say there is some donation monies available, we would like to give it to you in order that you may install? I just don't want to start crossing lines here.
I think there might be some confusion in the wording, the language.
I must have saved the wrong version of this. That had been updated based on our last meeting. The funding that we received under donations has been closed out to the region, and we have indicated to the chair, I guess, of the Dog Park Friends that we will no longer be taking donations here now that the funding that they needed for the park is completed, and that they could communicate. We gave the direct link to the individual at the region that's responsible for that, and they can communicate directly with them in the future.
I think the counselor was thinking that the town, it says by the town to install a wind barrier. The region's installing the wind barrier, is that correct?
Doing all of the work. We are just contributing the remainder of the donated funds to them.
It's collected by the town to install, for the region to install a wind barrier. That's probably how it should have been.
So in fact, the region maintains control and liability of that facility. Then, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to number 18? think there were some folks that were very pleased that some signs went up on Regional Road 20 for that. And there's a cleanup involved, I think, is from users as well. So well-used park in our town. Any other issues on the corporate services report, Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our treasurer. Number 19, sale of Old Pelham Fire Station number 2. Have we undertaken an appraisal of the property yet, and will that be coming to us in an in-camera session in the future?
Madam Treasurer?
We are currently in the process of getting a market value appraisal done on it and just determining what methodology to use. So we've contacted a few sources. It will come back to council with respect to what the minimum bid might be in a request for proposal, and then the document will be prepared and released.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others to that issue? Others to any other issues? There being none, I call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, and we look forward to that information that councillors asked for at our next meeting, the May meeting. The next item has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak that Committee of the Whole receive the, what did I miss here? I'm sorry. Oh, thank you, Madam Clerk. There are a couple of verbal reports under Public Works and Utilities. The first verbal report on Fenwick Downtown Beautification Streetlight Standards. Mr. CAO, please illuminate the situation for us.
Oh, it's pretty big.
My train of thought just went out the window. Thank you. We have received a number of concerns, consistent number of concerns from area residents with regards to light standards that were put in. Just by way of background, the light standards that were installed are the light and illumination standards, not the pedestrian scale standards, so they're quite a bit bigger in size. They're actually the same model standard that we've installed along Pelham Street, downtown Font Hill. The reason why that particular model was suggested is because the wide base on the standard contains all of the infrastructure, the cable, the hydro, all that sort of stuff is in the standard itself. So that circumference is required. The question then became, well, why do we need so many of these? And are there some that we don't need that we could possibly eliminate in response to some of the community feedback? And the answer is yes. We met with both the design team and we met with the contractor on site. RTG Electrical did the electrical design, and the design is partially in response to what the required illums are needed to appropriately light the street for vehicle safety. And it was determined that some of the lights are not required, some will be required. So as it stands today, the light standard that was located in front of the broken gavel that raised some concerns with people, except for the owner of the actual establishment who'd had no problem with it. That light standard has now been removed. And there's two light standards, significantly large light standards on the pedestrian sidewalk adjacent to the flagpole. Those two are also being removed, so it will reduce some of the concerns. The other standards are required for road illumination reasons. However, I think part of the perceptual problem has been that the existing hydro poles have yet to be removed, which has created even more clutter. And there's a lot of overhead wires still, so when you're in that environment, not only is the work not completed, but you still have residual infrastructure that is yet to be removed. I think a lot of those concerns will be addressed when the existing wood poles are removed and those overhead lines go away. It will certainly open up the space along with the removal of the three standards that I've indicated.
Thank you. Councilor Ribbiak, question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, thanks to the CAO. I asked for those reports, and I'm pleased to hear them. Concern with the light standard at the broken gavel, and pleased to see that it's being moved, but its location suggested, and we may be wrong here, suggested that either the standard was on private property or the steps to the gavel were on public property. So is there any clarification required about that? it just seemed like such a strange juxtaposition. Are those stairs properly situated? Is there anything about that is at all
I
irregular?
have no information one way or the other. It's not been raised as a concern on the administration level. We have no concern with it.
Okay, fair enough. The other concern, of course, and this has to do with light standards elsewhere within Fenwick as well, particularly at that point, that gate into the downtown where everything is so narrow, that the placement of those standards really made it impossible to walk, especially when cars are parked where they're supposed to park, and with what's left being sucked up by a light standard, became very, very difficult. So I trust that in dealing with those light standard issues, all those have been taken into consideration and to the greatest degree possible, because I don't think they'll ever be perfect.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We are currently advocating to remove some additional standards. It's again trying to get the illumination required on the road surface. It's a bit like traffic engineering. I'm not sure how much of it is science and how much of it is
Not science.
not science.
The opposite, whatever
The
that is.
opposite of scientific. So we're still trying to nail that down, but it's not an issue that's we're still advocating for removal of some additional standards.
Thank you. I do appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Any others? I know that there's been, this is supposed to be about light standards, but it is in the report, but I know that there's some interest in lighting those gas lamps, having some sort of ceremony and thanking the significant donors for those, and as well some sort of celebration for downtown Fenwick once it's done. I don't know whether to direct this to you or to the director in terms of the timing of completion of the project, now that the snow has mostly melted. Mr. Cieo?
We're anticipating completion over the next 8 weeks or so. We certainly are aware of the need for a ribbon cutting and official opening, lighting of the gas lamps, all of that sort of festival type celebration, which we certainly are working on, and we'll be unveiling the details shortly.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Now, verbal update regarding the status of road repairs, Foss Road from Church Street Easterly. Is that you, or is that Ms. Clementio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, still investigating here. But from what I can understand, the Foss Road water main replacement or water main construction project resulted in these crosscuts along the road that were necessary for bringing the water from the water main to through to the services. So I did look into it and found that the resurfacing of the road was originally submitted in the 2015 budget, first and second submission. But with having to prioritize the road budget and to decide which ones were at highest risk, that project was deferred. Right now it's listed under 2016 wants, and we'll roll into what I'm starting to uncover as a need to do a roads assessment for all of Pelham to make sure we're looking at the classification of the roads and the condition, and trying to have an overall plan here to better align when water main projects or sanitary projects happen, to make sure when at all possible you try to align that with the road reconstruction project, so you don't have these long delays when the road is left in that state. Part of a necessary beast with having construction done on the water main.
Thank you. Councillor, you raised the issue.
I did, and again, I appreciate the report. The quality of that road deteriorated significantly over the course of the winter. The cuts deepened significantly, so there was a lot of shifting that went on. Interestingly enough, with the warm weather, they seem to be flattening out a little bit. That can't be good for the infrastructure underneath all that shifting going on. So my suggestion is to take another look at that and determine what exactly the need is, not necessarily for the comfort of the drivers. Frankly, traffic has slowed marvelously through that area, which is a whole other problem, and we might consider speed ditches rather than speed bumps in future, because it seems to be quite effective. But the fact is that they got very deep and very bad, and now they're flattening out again. So there's something in that substrata that is probably going to cost us a lot of money if we don't take a look at it. So I simply offer that for you to take a look at and maybe find some way of determining whether it should be done in 2016 or 2015 or however.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll be sure to consider that when we investigate.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Director. Anything else on that particular issue? Councillor Pat?
So just picking up on what Councillor Ribbiak, so when you say you're, through you to the director, will you be doing a road assessment, a technical engineering assessment of that road this year? Or are we just going to try and repair it as well as we can? Because I'm hearing there is some, I've driven that today and I'm just, we had speeding issues there a couple of years ago. People were using that as a raceway all the way down. But in the meantime, if the road has reached a condition that it needs critical repair or something like that, will we know that up ahead of time, or is that what you're suggesting?
Ms. Clementio?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. The full engineering road assessment would not be planned in budget for 2015. Not that I'm aware of, no. What we are talking about is an overall assessment, probably done at first crack by internal staff, to at least have something on paper, whether or not we might plan in 2016 to open that up to be something that we would bring in technical assistance with a consulting firm to do the full assessment. That said, with us being able to go out and investigate Foss Road in particular, once we've got the thaw out of the ground, there are several other roads that we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on. Should anything critical come up, then you would know that would be flagged immediately.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Just along those lines, I'm very pleased to hear that, because years ago, and I just look at Councillor Durley and I, we were at a time reassessing all of the infrastructure, particularly the roadway systems, for a variety of reasons, not just, Mr. Mayor, you remember, not just a deterioration of weather, but several other factors, basically, again, to protect us that the condition of the roads were not also conducive to creating accidents. And we had some litigation that occurred in certain areas. We made some repairs on some of those roads, if you recall. So I think it would encourage, strongly encourage us to do that from a liability standpoint. If in fact the weather has been, as you probably know, it's been brutal on all infrastructure. And if you've been following lately, all of us have been following with the announcements of feds, where they're looking at putting money is into the water, sewer, and roadway systems. So aside from the GTA, I think we've got some areas that we need to really carefully look at to ensure that those are being done. So I strongly encourage that, and if something does come up in the meantime, that overall assessment of all of Pelham's roadway systems is, I think, due.
Thank you, Councillor. And
Thanks.
Just to build on that, I think, and what the director is suggesting, we did do an assessment, the town did an assessment
Way back.
of bridges.
That's right.
And we are doing a significant and important bridge on Sawmill
Yep.
this year as a result of that assessment from a few years ago. And I think what the director is suggesting is something that's a bit similar to that, maybe not as an initial first blush, but later on in 16. So staff, it sounds like staff will take a first appraisal of it. So instead of it being in the former director's head, and in a sort of a 5 or 10 year plan on paper, that it's actually sort of a more rigorous assessment. So commend staff for looking at that.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to not, but are you looking at it, staff doing it internally this year?
I think that's what the director
You're
indicated.
going to come back to us with?
Yes, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so that I understand clearly, you come back with what the internal assessment has shown.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I haven't thought that far ahead on when we would kind of
Right.
compile a summary. At first crack, we're going to at least see what has been classified and find a
Right.
program for how we can assess the risk.
Yeah, that'd be good to
Very good.
have it on paper.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Anything further to those matters? All right, thank you for those updates and the discussion. And now it's been moved by Councilor Ribbiak that the Committee of the Whole receive the March 2015 Public Works and Utilities Report for information. Any other items Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received some communication from some folks on Wilson Crossing, right at the end of Wilson Crossing, where the new Rittenhouse Estates
Right.
is going. And one in particular, a house on the south side of Wilson Crossing, right at that fence, there are 3 large ash trees that are on the Rittenhouse Estates property that have been dead for a couple of years and branches have been falling off. I'm just wondering, it is on private property, but if we could make the owner of that development aware of that, if these trees can go, the people that are talking to me are saying they're in fear of something happening to their house or to them or to their cars when branches are coming off, and we're getting into some windy seasons. So if we could look at the owner of that development to say, can you do something with those trees? They're very large. They're probably about 40 feet high, and they are kind of rickety, and branches have been falling off of that. So there is a possible danger, a possible challenge there. So, if we could alert the owner of that, and if something can be done, I'm sure it'd be much appreciated.
Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll make note of that. And
Thank you.
Investigate, for sure.
Thank you. To the Director's report, Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With some latitude, and I'm not even sure that this is the right time to raise this issue, but I've had some communication with some of the folks that live on Canberra Road with respect to speeding. And there's been a recent accident there again, and reports of people, basically matting the throttle on their vehicle down Canberra. And I think it behooves us to take some measures to try and encourage the Niagara Regional Police to do some further enforcement, and maybe for our staff to investigate whether or not there are some simple methods that we could use to try and slow down the traffic. Perhaps looking at some guerrilla urbanism, methodologies that won't cost a whole lot, but that would at least show we're trying to move in the right direction. I don't know who to.
Through
Ms.
you,
Clemencio.
Mr. Mayor, for sure, we'll look into this as well. I've got some other outstanding speeding complaints in areas, and I'm just trying to feel my way through and investigate. So if you could forward more information about where and who.
Where on
and
Canberra?
Any kind of
Sure.
details, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, and I think the Director received an email on regarding Hay Street North in particular, which has been an issue for a bunch of years.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, you want to comment?
Just to inform council that I have had discussions with the director with regards to tactical urbanism approaches, and that's something that we'll be proceeding with. So it ties both into the Hay Street North issue as well as the Canberra Road issue.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Papp. Go
Very
ahead, sorry.
quickly, I'm pleased to see, through you, Mr. Mayor, that there's still obviously some confusion about the Pelham Street pedestrian crosswalk signals. Every day, seems like people really don't understand how to use those. So I'd be pleased to hear what we can do, because it's, the other day, again, people walking out in front, looking at the green light. We haven't had any serious accidents, but there obviously needs to be more education and people more aware of how these lights work.
Your report indicates, Madam Director, that you're still investigating. Can you shed a little bit more light on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately I can't. This is one that the engineering group has a file on, and I just haven't got to this one.
No, I
with,
understand.
With the engineering inspector yet, but I reviewed it to make sure that what was on the report was valid. He said it's underway, and that's fortunately all I can give you at this time.
Okay. Thank you. We look forward to updates.
I'll
And
note it,
it's
and I will follow up.
it's thank you, Councillor, for raising it. It obviously is maybe with people walking a little bit more in the warmer weather, that it might become an important issue. I know that I bumped into someone who was suggesting that council look at the Pelham Street and Pancake
Yes.
intersection as
Yes.
well, and that's
Yeah.
sort of the same ilk. So
This
Look
saga
forward to that.
continues.
Doesn't stop.
anything else, Councillor Papp?
No, I think enough said on that.
Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. Moving to another part of the
Go ahead,
report.
sir.
The Rural Watershed Master Study. It's been going on for a bit. I wonder whether we would be able to have an interim report of findings at some point over the next few months, just to see what is being looked at, what are the issues that are being identified, understanding it wouldn't be a final report at that point, but since we're looking at a program that's doing kind of one municipal drain per year, presumably we could get a report and see where we are.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did speak to the drainage superintendent about the status of this one, and he contacted the consulting group to see where things were. They said they're still collecting field data, but they would be preparing sort of a preliminary,
Good.
not even a draft report, just a preliminary summary of where things are at and what their findings were, so that would be something that we could probably bring forward.
Mr. Mayor, any sense of when?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know, but I can certainly find out.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to more information at our next meeting in May. At least information, right? Okay, anything further? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And thanks for that and for coming up to speed on so many topics. It's a big portfolio, so thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Ribbiak that committee receives the issue summary report as it pertains to the architectural review process for community improvement plan, CIP, grant applications, and the establishment of a CIP promotion program, and further that committee direct planning staff to continue to perform the architectural review and processing of CIP grant applications, and further that committee direct planning staff to initiate a CIP promotion program as discussed within the report. Comments, questions? We're good? Okay. I did have a phone call this afternoon by a member of the former Downtown Beautification Committee asking about it, and I will be providing some information to that individual that was quite involved in the CIP and the program, so but that individual's fine with the direction.
Well, that's good.
Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Been moved by Councilor Papp. The committee receives the issue summary report as it pertains to the formation of a drainage advisory committee, and further that the committee direct building staff to discontinue work on the development of a drainage advisory committee, as such committee is seen as redundant at this time. Questions, comments, Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't help but feel as I read through that somehow we kind of passed one another in terms of what we were looking for, or what the town was looking for, town residents were looking for with regard to a drainage committee. The report speaks to a drainage advisory committee that whose particular preoccupation would be the municipal drains, and only the municipal drains. Whereas the interest that was expressed, certainly to me, by residents of the town is to have a mechanism by which flooding issues, drainage issues in a more general sense, could be brought to the attention of responsible staff, whether or not they dealt with municipal drains. Very frequently, the issues around flooding, certainly in over the southern part of the town, have to do with the extent to which road culverts and road ditches seem inadequate to deal with the volumes of water that approach them. And they create some issues, and residents who are affected by that want a mechanism by which to bring to the attention of the town those circumstances as they occur. So I understand the motion and the recommendation here with respect to municipal drains. They're being looked after, and that's a very narrow discussion. I think the wider issue of drainage needs to be looked at. We don't know we don't get the information in a timely way from the people who are most affected by it. And I think that an advisory committee made up of interested residents who want us to know and are in a position to see what's happening as it's happening would be a very useful one. So it's possible, I think, to say that drainage committees that deal with municipal drains may be redundant here in Pelham, but I think the wider question is a real one and could benefit a great deal by having the kind of committee of interested residents that look at the situation generally as it occurs. So I'm just thinking that this one report missed the point, at least as I understand it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Others? Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there is a flooding problem, and we've been made aware of a couple, and most recently being Hurricane and Pelham down there, and I believe in not too distant past, down the end of Foss Road by the pumpkin patch, there were problems. So when there is a problem of flooding, we're certainly made aware of it, and this is the time where we need to investigate, and the advisory committee, in fact, is the people that are affected by it, and they certainly will let us know that there's a problem. So, I'm just wondering how this could be proactive, because nobody's going to complain until they get flooded. So, just wonder, in the discussion towards that.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there is knowledge within the town of a number of areas where there are chronic problems that obviously aren't corrected because they are chronic problems, that storm after storm, year after year, the flooding occurs in the same places for the same causes, and frequently what's perceived is that the causes of the issues are in fact town infrastructure that doesn't move the water fast enough. And I think that it's out of an understanding that those problems don't get fixed, that residents want an opportunity to have, perhaps in a more formal way, an opportunity to bring that information forward and have it responded to.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Durley?
Yeah, perhaps sending it back to looking at a flooding advisory committee might be an answer, because drainage implies the Drainage Act. So there it is. It's perhaps it's a wordsmithing thing, but when I look at drainage, I'm looking at the impact of the Drainage Act, which is a very strong piece of legislation. Flooding is a localized problem, and certainly a means by which we can be made aware of that and possible reasons for this flooding would be something that would be valuable to staff to have a look at.
Thank you. I'm gonna before I turn back to you, Councillor, I'm gonna ask the CAO if there are issues with drainage, as the councillor's suggesting, what's the proper course for residents, whether they're farmers or not, or whatever, to deal with it? How are those dealt with?
There's a number of ways they can be dealt with. Are you asking with regards to how somebody can approach the town, or what our response would be?
Yes. How somebody approaches the town. There's an issue, as the councillor described. There's flooding over Foss Road in a certain location.
Yeah. Again, if it's a complaint that comes in, it could come in through PSR. It could be a letter that's written. It could be, and most often is, a phone call or an email indicating that there's a problem, and then the drainage superintendent is usually the first person to respond, gives an assessment to staff. If it's something that the Public Works Department can deal with, then they certainly will. A lot of the drainage flooding issues we have are a mixture of private property issues and, yes, town infrastructure in some cases, but I'm not aware of any occasion when there's been a complaint that it hasn't been investigated and an answer's been provided back to whoever the person who has concern.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess my point, if I can sort of dip an oar in here, again, if you look at the Public Works Department report, there's an issue just from this last month. There's one issue on ditching. That particular issue is on hold, likely because there was snow on the ground. Another 2 regarding road flooding, those 2 are closed. Catch basin issues, they were dealt with, et cetera. So, you know, I hear what the councilor's saying. I understood initially that this was to be from the information we received from the public, that it was to deal with a drainage superintendent and all that. Whereas since that time, we've become very proactive in terms of how we're dealing with this, with the watershed studies, the drainage superintendent coming at the town as opposed to from another municipality, very active on that, and we continue to monitor it. And then as well, if individuals, whether they're farmers or residents in the community, have issues regarding flooding, that they would contact the town and do contact the town. So I'm not sure that a specific committee that meets twice a year is the proper solution. I guess I just don't see evidence of it, is what I'm dipping my oar in the water to say. So, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess it would be important to remember that one of our goals strategically is to involve our residents. And when you have residents coming forward interested in a particular issue that affects them, and quite a number of them, and that they have issues with the responses that the town provides when those issues arise, that it would behoove us to find a way of sitting down and communicating with them. And if it isn't a formal committee with terms of reference that require people to meet periodically, and then perhaps something more ad hoc would work. But I don't think there's certainly in my mind much denying the fact that there are chronic issues. They arise. The answers that people have received from the town in the past have not been satisfactory. Yes, some of the issues are probably private property issues. Frequently, the answer that people received was the ditches are for draining the roads, and they're good enough, and the rest of the drainage is not the issue of the towns. Those kinds of answers have left some residents in some parts of the town wondering how they can participate and help deal with the issues that affect them and people around them and the property that they have pretty seriously. So I accept Councillor Durley's observation that it may be wordsmithing, that maybe it's a flooding advisory committee, and maybe it's not even an advisory committee as we've understood some of the other committees to be. But I think that there really needs to be some mechanism to bring those who know what's going on in touch with those who can do something about it legitimately, not beyond the purview of the town, but legitimately, and get that those issues looked at closely and if possible, resolved.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, as my council colleagues know, I'm a strong advocate for community involvement and for committee work. However, if the purpose of the committee is merely to receive complaints and be a sounding board for the public, I don't see it serving a useful purpose. If it were to collect expertise that we lack here in the town to look at a specific issue and bring relevance to that issue and assist both council and our staff in moving a project forward, then I see a value to the advisory committee. I think perhaps a suggestion that Councillor Ribbiak said in his last presentation was that perhaps we need to have a town hall meeting, one in Fenwick, one in North Pelham, one in Font Hill, to specifically allow citizenry to come in, present their drainage concerns that they're aware of, have town staff there to collect the data, and then prepare a response to those sort of things. At least it shows our willingness to provide a sounding board to those people who may be frustrated by the process and maybe don't understand the PSR process, et cetera. So I wouldn't be in favor of an advisory committee if it's all that's going to be is a receiver of complaints, because I think it will serve no purpose other than to cause more frustration by creating another layer of bureaucracy. So I would be very supportive of a town hall type meeting, but not in favor of the advisory committee as it's been laid out here.
Thank you. Councilor Ribbiak, do you want to make an amendment or something to this motion?
I'm not sure I know how. I think I understand that proceeding with a drainage advisory committee under the Drainage Act is not appropriate, not a direction to go. So I would want us to probably accept that motion as it stands. But I think that we really need to ask staff perhaps to consider what kind of an exercise could involve residents who are affected by flooding chronically, to ensure that we have the kind of understanding of the situation that we need to have in order to be able to advance the issue. And I appreciate some of the suggestions that were made, and I think that it would be really useful to proceed with something along those lines, something less formal perhaps, but I think that we would be making a mistake if we walked away from the issue by accepting this motion and giving it no further thought. I think more needs to be done, and I'm looking for ways of seeing how that can be done.
Okay. I'm going to ask the CAO there, so hopefully we can resolve this. There is a staff committee, multidisciplinary committee that's looking at dealing with the effects of, because it's in our strategic plan,
Yes.
dealing with the effects of the environment.
Perfect
And
alignment.
they're working on that. There might be some resolution out of that. We do also have a new director of public works that I've had some discussions about ditching and flooding and all of that with her. And so, we do also want to allow that director to bring in her expertise and her knowledge and work with staff. So, Mr. CAO, do we know the timing of that multidisciplinary staff committee, or can we direct staff to come back with a report in the future about some options so that we don't lose this particular issue that is of concern across the town?
Yep.
So that we might accept this recommendation but add something to it. Mr. CAO, do you have, you're pointing to a few staff
I
down there.
was just
Nobody's,
signaling, I believe it's October that committee work is due, is that correct?
The first group is due this week, that's identifying the issues,
Right.
prioritizing, and then the next group is gonna take that information, and that's the communication, pre, during, and post, and they're got that plan, and that's due October 1st.
So,
Mr.
Mr.
Seow?
Mayor, in response to this, I would suggest that council approve the resolution that's before you, and I will speak with the Director of Public Works about the concerns with flooding, and we'll report back. I'd ask for maybe a month or two. We'll report back with some suggestions on how to engage the public with these issues.
Okay, Counselor?
Thank you. I appreciate all of that. Very productive input. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. I'm gonna call, so there's no resolution required on this or amendment. So I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried, and we look forward to receiving that information in a month or two, as the CAO suggested. Thank you. Now, it has been moved by Councilor Durley, the Committee of the Whole receive the March 2015 Planning and Development Services Report for information. Questions, comments? We're ready for the calling of the question. March looked, lots of activity in building in March. That's amazing. Anything else? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Moved by Councilor Kirsty, Committee of the Whole receive the March 2015 Fire Services Report for information. Questions, comments? Councilor Junkin.
It's just a comment. I was at the new fire hall on the weekend, and surprisingly, it actually ties in with Mr. Councilman Rubiek's concern. I was there about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and of course, the chief will attest to right outside that main door. Unfortunately, we have that concrete problem. And 3 weeks ago, what's happened, of course, is that the land has settled right outside the main pedestrian doors, so the concrete has cracked. And about 3 weeks ago, there was about a good 2 inches difference between the two slabs, the one that had sank and the one that had stayed the same. I mean, it still looks like crap, but I went there today, and for whatever reason, they're almost even now. So it is kind of weird. But at the same time, you do have this crack. Any idea, through you, Mr. Mayor, what we can do about that eventually?
Mr. Mayor?
Chief?
Yes, we identified the problem. There's actually two areas of concrete that we're having problems with. We've contacted the contractor, and as soon as the weather permitting and it warms up, they're coming back, they're gonna remove that concrete, and the two sections, they're gonna repair them.
Oh, excellent. Now, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I thought the contractor, the one who built the building and the one who did the the concrete, are they two different contractors?
Yes, the general contractor that oversaw the project, and
Yes.
then he hired the subs, so.
Okay.
They're still they're still monitoring what's
Okay.
going on, and
Okay.
through Kim, our facilities manager, and our treasurer, who holds the power.
Okay.
If they wanna get paid type thing, so you're gonna fix it, so no, they haven't balked anything, they're gonna come back and replace what needs to be.
Excellent.
It's under warranty.
Yeah, basically, yes.
Okay, great. Yep.
Thank you. And just to that, there is the installation dinner this weekend, I believe, at Station 3. Yeah, so councilors received the invitation for that, I hope, a few weeks ago. Okay, and
No,
No?
no.
I'm sorry.
we'll make sure we get that out. I did receive a question from the organizer. I thought that went to all of council, so we'll make sure that we send that around. Yeah.
And is it this weekend?
It's this Saturday, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Anything further on the fire chief's report? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. Should have changed the order. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, that committee of the whole received the March 2015 Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Department report for information. Are we out of order here?
Do the human resource.
Oh, sorry.
Order.
The HR report, HR.
We're out of order here, so sorry about that. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Director of HR was going to make a presentation to council tonight, but being mindful of the time, we're going to bump up against curfew. I might suggest that presentation be deferred, so there's appropriate time and attention from council given to it, and that we can also finish the rest of the business on the agenda.
Thank you, council colleagues. You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So to the HR director's report, we don't have the paper here, so I need a mover for that. Councillor Papp, you'll move receipt of the report and that we receive a presentation at our next meeting. Discussion to the report, Councillor King, and then Councillor Durley. Councillor King.
No, I have no comment.
Okay, Councillor Durley.
What appears as page 83 and 84 of 132 on the call to order shot is very, very difficult to read. I'm just wondering if we could get something that's perhaps on paper that's legible. There seems to be a lot of information there. We can't discern it, or at least I can't in my old age and my glasses. So, if that's possible, I appreciate that.
That's those legal pages or
The
11 by 17.
interview guidance grid, and,
Yeah.
and that's, I think you know where I'm going with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
It does take up a rather large piece of paper. So.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
thank you. Others? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question with respect to the presentation. Will that include the interview grid and all of that sort of stuff, or should we be asking questions about the grid and all that?
Not that we can read it, Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, unfortunately, the presentation was only going to be on our 2015 performance plan, and I wanted to share with you the evolution of the plan from 2014 to 2015. So but there wasn't going to be a lot of discussion around my recruitment plan, but certainly I can include that if you're interested.
Do you want to ask it now?
Well, it's up to the, to council. I mean, if it can be included in the, we can deal with it all at once, or
I would prefer it that way.
I do have a few questions about it, so.
Okay, let's deal with it next time.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right, thank you. Others? And maybe you can ask the director as well to give her a bit of a heads up,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, before that. Anything else? Gonna call the question. All those in favor of receipt, any opposed? That motion's carried. And now to Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Department. Moved by Councillor Papp that we receive it for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Papp?
Well, very quickly, congratulations, we got the transportation contract. That's very important. And what I wanted to ask is, just clarifying, all of the steps that you've outlined here are going to be done by staff. Is that correct? The public consultation, all that stuff, or are we going to engage? Because we did talk to some outside sources about, so I'm just curious how
Ms. Van
that's going to,
Ravensway?
sort of a work plan of who's involved, who's going to do what?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we had a brief discussion today with regard to how we're going to be rolling this out.
Let's see.
Obviously, it's very important to us to have our public consultation as soon as possible. So that will take place, we're hoping, between March and mid-April. It is also very important because that we do have our provider of the services involved during this process, because I have to admit, transportation is new to us, and to have specialized individuals involved would be very important to us.
Councillor Papp?
Yes, I would strongly encourage it, because as we did, we worked collaboratively with the region, and we did talk to a third party as well, that whatever we can maximize the use of those resources to help us build this. And the only reason I say this, and unfortunately I know the mayor couldn't be there, but the last meeting, Councillor Timms, out of the blue, you probably know this, came up, we didn't, oh, okay, I might as well. He proposed that the Transportation Steering Committee, a change for the regional intermunicipal transit, to bring it down. I just about fell off my chair.
To include Fawn Hill?
To include Font Hill, down Rice Road and down Pelham Street. I said, that's great, but hold their horses, you know, like, so he was encouraging that, and I hope that, you know, Mr. Mayor, you
Councillor
talked.
Beatty and I have been encouraging that as well.
Yeah,
and,
so he
it's good.
tabled that, but we
Yeah.
didn't have quorum at the committee. So we're gonna be bringing it back in April, so that would be one of the proposal of actually hooking up into our system and bringing it down, and we thought it was great.
Awesome. It's awesome.
So, okay, so I'll look forward to that, but I thought that was something that I thought, geez, there's a natural hookup already, so I don't know whether he preempted us, or he's trying to build on the ridership, especially after what you said today, that the things are dropping, they figured this would be a main corridor.
Yes, and, you know, it's been something that we've been promoting and talking about, and I
Right.
think with this grant, I think, and we've discussed it here, that in our minds, we're thinking sort of September 2016, prior to this grant. Now that we have the grant, it would make sense to move that
Right.
forward, so. The CAO wants to comment. Is this on Councillor Papp's earlier comment?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor. Just to let the council know that I have asked the director to provide a written report with regards to the grant and the summary
Yes.
of what's about, what we're doing.
Correct.
Unfortunately, the director had the nerve to go on vacation the last 2 weeks, and we haven't been able to prepare that, but we will have something to you at the next council meeting.
To that extent, Mr. CEO, with that, I would also say to you and it's only a matter, share that with the regional transportation people and the engineer, actually, the guy, Kumar and the head of the, he came up after. They're all excited about us getting this, and they want to work in tandem with us.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you'll do that. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Others?
To that,
Others to that?
not to that.
Others to others? Councillor Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I bring this forward as a result of a personal question I received from within my own family with respect to a town event. And it's with respect to food allergies. And it came up with respect to a peanut allergy and how we managed that sort of situation. And then I got thinking about it in a broader scale, because when we have our camps and what have you, I presume, are doing some feeding, we're having, events where kids are involved with foods and all that. I just wonder if we have a procedure in place whereby we, consider that, and if we have considered it and we do have allergens present, that we notify people by way of signage or by way of notice or what have you. So I'm asking that through you to our Director of Recreation.
Director?
For you, Mr. Mayor. All of our events, all of our camps, programs, we make it known that our services are not peanut free, because we cannot guarantee that. And many of our trips that we go on, we cannot guarantee that the environment that we're taking the children are peanut free. During the registration process, we ask that the parents make it clear to us if they have any allergies, medical information that we need to know. That would be identified with the counselors. The counselors, normally if there is a mild allergy, there would be EpiPens involved and so forth. So we clearly ask for the information. We also make it known that we cannot guarantee a peanut-free environment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to hear the fact that we're asking the questions, that we're documenting it, and in fact, we are collecting EpiPens. There's a wide range of allergies out there that go far beyond peanuts, and I'm glad that we are collecting that data and immunizing ourselves, as Councillor Papp likes to say. But with the EpiPen, we're immunizing the kids as well, so that's a good thing.
Dr. Papp.
Okay, thank you. Others? To the Director's report, Council Papp?
Okay, I am going to be very quick. Again, I'm a little confused. Just help me, Mr. Mayor, through to Vicky. The supper market, you're talking about extending the wine out, and you're going to come back on April the 20th. So this is this a done deal that we're not going to serve wine throughout the park, or are we still waiting to hear back from the band shell? And by the way, congratulations. I see we are starting 2 weeks earlier, and we're getting a huge response to the supper market. So I just need to, I'm a little confused when I read this.
Well,
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I said, we met with both parties, the Band Shell Committee and the Farmers Market Committee. We indicated to them that we have had many requests to license the whole park.
Right.
We identified the reasonings behind not only for the entertainment value and also it's easier to control the liability
For the whole park.
within the whole park. Since then, both parties have gone back to their groups, and as you've seen tonight, you received one response from the Band Shell Committee indicating they do not want the park to be fully licensed. And actually today I received a letter from the Farmers Market Committee also indicating they do not want the farmers market, or the the whole facility licensed. And in the same letter, a separate letter, I believe, was the request for approval to have a winery in that area. Our concern is if we have bottles of wine being
Right.
sold, we fully agree with promoting wineries in the farmers markets. It's very popular. It's it works out well. But when you have an event right beside and a portion of it
They're gonna
being
open up and drink
licensed,
it.
it's very difficult for staff and the security to be able to control the whole area. So, in saying that, Our next meeting, I plan on preparing a report to council with recommendations,
Okay.
and attached will be their letters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for highlighting that. We look forward to that discussion and the recommendation. Others to the report? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We look forward to that. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King that Committee of the Whole receive the March 2015 Clerk's Department report for information, and the clerk be directed to prepare a council correspondence policy for consideration at the next PNP committee meeting scheduled for April 20th, 2015. Discussion, Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you. Just wanted to comment on the handbook, best practices for
Yes.
appointed boards and committees. It seems like a year or so ago, we started a discussion on this thing, and one of the outcomes that I certainly wanted was a handbook of this nature that defines clearly what everyone's roles are so that they can participate. And here it is. So, thank you. Congratulations. Looks like a great job, and look forward to its use in this application.
Thank you. It's an excellent resource. Clerk, thank you very much. Others? Councillor Papp?
Nobody got married? I'm looking every month.
Ain't nobody married yet.
Or is it pending?
Madam,
I can't help it.
Madam
Put
Clerk,
it
you're
in there
still
and look
working
for
on it, is that
stats.
correct?
Your
Mr. Mayor, we
security
are still
checks.
working with the IT department to ensure that the licensing procedures are exactly perfect. And the training for officiating ceremonies will take place in June.
Thank you. I'll notify all my friends. 2020, no.
Thank you. Others? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin that Committee of the Whole receive the March 2015 Chief Administrative Officer's report for information. Comments, questions? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, and apologies for butting in over and over again. I'm looking at the schedule
Yes.
for East Fonthill. Wonder whether, through you, Mr. Mayor, the CEO might just expand that a little bit. It seems, to my mind, a little long at the front end and awfully short at the back end.
Are you talking about the page one, the East Fonthill working project, or are you talking about the potential community center?
The community
Potential
center.
Okay.
The schedule for the community center. I'm trying to find it in front of me here, but I do recall that was
It's the last page.
the very last page. Yes, there it is. And it as I say, it just strikes me as being awfully long. My concern is, of course, that we want to be able to acquire funding as it arises, but at the end, it describes a construction process that begins in April of 2017 and finishes in August of 2017.
Yeah, I think that's an error. It should be April 2016. Construction.
Well,
So the documents might be available in February, which means that the tender would go out then.
And construction begins in April.
Construction would be awarded in April of, so about
Well,
this
that's a horse
time
of a
next
completely
year.
different color.
And then it would take, yeah.
That makes more
And
sense.
that'd
'cause
be I don't know how that got, I think Gremlins got in there.
I
It was,
apologize for that. We'll certainly change that timeline. The thinking was that we could hire two firms and build it twice as fast.
No, 24/7. Just 24/7, just like the road work.
Wow. Well, I'm,
This is
Mr.
your
Mayor, I'm
creativity.
really relieved to see that, because I'm trying to figure out how to politely say that you're describing an impossibility. And it turns out to be a typo, which of course is entirely possible. So I apologize for all the things that I was thinking. And I'll leave it at that.
no, we're not crazy. We just can't type, right? There you go. Okay. Mr. CEO, just, I know that you've had some conversations with the chair of the Architectural Design Advisory Committee, some questions about public involvement in the process, and that's not really on this potential timeline. Can you just speak about it with council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the timeline presented is sort of a broad strokes timeline. The timeline can be expanded or contracted, kind of like an accordion, I guess, depending on what happens. We're hoping that it's contracted so that we accelerate the timeline. The committee has obviously done a lot of work, but it's also taken a lot of time. So we're at the point now where we're entering into what we're calling the specialized consultation period. So the architect will work directly with key stakeholders of the ADAC, namely the Y, the hockey users, et cetera, to get the specific technical expertise they need. Once the design reaches a point where there's facade drawings and other design concepts that have been fully developed, that's when we'll be having the public consultation, because we don't have anything to show the public yet that is sort of for public consumption or that would be coherent to the average resident. So we want to try and develop that. Once that's developed, then that will trigger the point in time where we will have the public consultations and the public feedback on the project.
Thank you very much. Anyone else to the amended schedule, the corrected schedule, Councillor Papp?
And I'm glad to hear that, Mr. CEO, and as we said tonight, also being clear when we go to the public that we have some guesstimates of costs, so that there's no misunderstanding, and I can't overemphasize that. There's been a lot of bad information on the streets about what's been on Councilor Kirsty and I, and we're trying to decipher it, but it's important for staff to say, when we go publicly, this is the range. I've been involved in projects like this before. Say, here's what it's going to cost, here's what you expect. So I look forward to that, because it's critical. People will ask you, that looks great, but
How much is it going to cost?
how much is it going to cost you to build? How much it's going to operate? That's what we hear all the time, constantly. Thank you.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the costing as well, we have re-engaged Leisure Plan as council's directed. I've had some discussion. That particular project is up and running with regards to assessing what the additional square footage means in both the context of the capital and, more importantly, the operating expense moving forward. So there will be a sort of an appendix or an amendment report to the original Leisure Plan study when that work has been completed.
Okay, thank you. And is it here, the hotel piece?
Yes.
You did have that meeting
I had
today. I don't know if you are able to give us a little bit more of a flavor.
The firm, the consulting firm, has been retained. PK, I always want to say Suban, but it's not. It's PKF Consultants, thank you, that have been contracted for the project. We met with him today in the kickoff meeting. I was very impressed with the level of expertise. We went through the East Font Hill project, particularly the site master plan, in some detail. They're looking for a considerable amount of information, particularly the economic development data that we've recently collected, along with user group information, the leisure plan report, etc. We also did a site visit with them, and there's basically three outcomes indicated we can expect to see. One is that there will be a clear case for a hotel that they can support, which then you would then start looking at contacting chains and whatnot for the development opportunity. The second and possible outcome is that you get sort of a gray area report where it's kind of on the line, and in order to push it over the line into the sustainability side, that there may be some possible things council could do to incentivize a hotel operation. And then the third outcome, obviously, is that it's just not feasible and you're wasting your time, or you're 5 to 10 years out before you could justify it. So they very clearly indicated what our expectations can be, and I'm very pleased to be working with them, and I look forward to their proposal or their report.
Good company.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. Anything else on the CEO's report? Okay, so let's, I'm going to call a question on the report as corrected. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And it's been moved by Councilor Drilley, this meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, April 20th, 2015, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried, and we look forward to that HR report at that meeting. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.
There you go. You can go first.